Before we get started on today's episode, I want to send a shout out to the listeners who are international. I think one of the amazing parts about podcasting is you can reach people internationally. So I definitely want to thank all the listeners who are in Australia, South Africa, different parts of Africa, different parts of Europe, Canada, Mexico, and South America. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it, and I hope I'm providing value for you, your life, and your community. Welcome to Do It for the Gram at Enneagram podcast with your host, certified Enneagram coach, Milton Stewart. Here we do it for the gram, not Instagram, but the Enneagram. We make moves to improve our lives and the lives of others in our community. Today we continue on our series of cultivating healthy relationships with each Enneagram type. Each type tends to have a pattern that can be detrimental to fostering healthy relationships. We are talking about all relationships, but mainly adult relationships. This means your spouse, girlfriend, boyfriend, friends, and your crazy relatives. Intro music, let's get it. Today we are going to look at the type 4. Throughout this episode, I will throw in a few quotes directly for Enneagram type 4s. So the Enneagram 4 is in the feelings, heart, and image center of intelligence. The archetype for the 4 is the romantic. Highly sensitive people are too often perceived as weaklings or damaged goods. To feel intensely is not a symptom of weakness. It is the trademark of truly being alive and compassionate. It is not the empath who is broken. It is society that has become dysfunctional and emotionally disabled. There is no shame in expressing your authentic feelings. Those who are at times described as being a hot mess or having too many issues are the very fabric of what keeps the dream alive for a more caring, humane world. Never be ashamed to let your tears shine a light in this world. A. Martin. Creating space for 4s. In order to create space for 4s, you first have to understand their elaborate amount of emotions. They are very relational and can feel and sense others' emotions quite well. 4s are archetyped the romantics because they usually romanticize about falling in love and having amazing relationships. Kind of the things that TV shows and Disney movies are made of. The only issue is that 4s have a tendency to internalize everything in their relationships, especially when things go wrong. They believe it is their fault and go to great lengths to figure out what they did wrong or what they could have done better. Taking ownership and responsibility is a good thing in life when it's balanced with a strong sense of self-worth and an understanding that in any relationship, when there's an issue, it is 90% of the time both people contributing to the problem. 4s take all the responsibility when something is wrong relationally, and many times that can put them in a depressed state. That pattern by 4s is a manifestation of seeing themselves inherently flawed and have some unique problem that others do not. 4s can really get trapped in their feelings, so they need someone who can present a thoughtful, logical, and practical side of things when those emotions flare strongly. 4s are usually supremely creative and artistic, so they need someone who can appreciate their gift and give them space to be creative. Fours also need space for moments of sadder emotions because just like the movie Inside Out, the sadder emotions help us to appreciate life so much more, especially for fours. Now remember, I said moments of sadness, which will probably be more sad moments than any other type, but not for too long of periods, or that could lead to some real depression. Be on alert for real long periods of sadness because that could be turning into some real clinical depression. With fours, seeing themselves as inherently flawed, they also need an encourager in their relationships. Someone to truly appreciate them. Someone who can let them know how amazing they really are and their creativity and artwork. Many times, fours are not aware of just how good their work truly is. So it's super important to let them know when you can. As I said earlier, fours are very relational. So they tend to know what you like and the things that make you happy. Make sure you know their joys and things they love as well. It is usually not that hard to tell, but pay attention because those small gestures and focus on details means a whole lot to fours. They're very appreciative of the small things that you do that are significant in a person's life. One of the gifts of the four is that they're able to interpret life experiences in such an intimate way, which many other types cannot do as well without some real work. So, creating space by creating enjoyable experiences for fours goes an extremely long way. Does your workplace stink because the culture sucks? Are you tired of tolerating people and wish you could all work together cohesively? Does the mere idea of going into work give you anxiety? If you said yes to any one of these, you should probably quit your job. But since you're not going to quit your job, you should contact Kaizen Careers. At Kaizen Careers, we are all about improving workplace performance. We use a unique tool called the Enneagram. The Enneagram helps individuals and organizations become more self-aware. That self-awareness lends into helping organizations with communication, conflict management, and leadership development, ultimately turning self-awareness into self-mastery and creating healthy workplace cultures so you can improve your services and bottom lines. Contact Kaizen Careers at KAIZENCAREERS.com or Milton at KaizenCareers.com, or give us a call at 901-334-1644. How to speak their language. Communicating with type 4s. Can you tell a personal story? Can you engage in an intimate conversation that involves your softer or hurt feelings? If you can, it's a beautiful way to speak to 4s. In relationships, 4s are highly invested in knowing your personal story, the good, the bad, and the ugly. 4s can handle intense emotions and prolonged emotional states. When you are talking with 4s, you can be your authentic self, showing flaws and all, because they naturally are already attuned to their own perceived flaws better than most people. Being open and honest with 4s helps them feel more normal in a healthy sense. It also gives them a chance to verbalize the flaws they have in a safe, vulnerable place. Speaking to 4s is easy. You just have to be open, honest, and willing to talk. Negative emotions like loneliness, envy, and guilt have an important role to play in a happy life. They're big, flashing signs that something needs to change. Gretchen Rubin. Good vibes. These are the types that the 4 tends to vibe easily with more than others. 7s offer 4s a sunny disposition in the midst of life that can seem very dreary. There is also a subtype of the 4 that is a look-alike type as a 7 as well. We will discuss that later. 6s are good vibes to 4s as well because they both feel misunderstood by society. So they have a common bond. 8s can be good vibes with 4s also because they actually connect very well on an emotional depth level if the 8 is willing to be vulnerable with them. Sandpaper types. These are the types that it tends to be a little bit hard to generate a relationship with. But as I say in every episode, remember, with different growth levels and different experiences, any number can get along with any number and have great friendship relationships. But on the onset, it can be very tough with certain types. So these types for the 4 they include the 2 and 5. 5s need space. 5s need space and 4s need intimacy. That can cause some relationship friction. 2s and 4s together create an explosion of feelings, which can lead to unhealthy relationships. Because everything becomes based on emotion in times of disagreement. The 2 typically pursues aggressively when in conflict, while the 4 is trying to flee the situation when usual tactics do not work. This can lead to the 4 assuming responsibility for faults in the relationship that are not theirs at all, but the emotional intensity involved can really drive a 4 into some depressed states when this happens. Avoid heavy criticism of 4s. They already see themselves as uniquely flawed at times. The last thing they need is heavy, unnecessary criticism. Avoid belittling or dismissing their feelings. Yes, they do have mood swings like no other type, but do not belittle those. Emotions are deeply interwoven into their core being. They are not trying to always have a mood swing. It's just something, it sometimes just happens, especially when self-mastery is not that high. But even when it is, sometimes the mood swings will still happen. Also, avoid things that will bring up 4s' battle with envy. 4s have to work on this constantly, but make sure you avoid best as possible setting up things that would spark envy within them. Be mindful, be thoughtful, and definitely do not call them overly sensitive in our westernized society. Envy blinds men and makes it impossible for them to think clearly. Malcolm X. Hopefully you have found some value in this podcast episode. You can help to keep this podcast going by supporting us on Patreon.com. Patreon.com is a site where you can support content providers. Podcasts are free to listeners, but not free for creators. It actually costs money and definitely time to produce consistent and weekly podcasts. I podcast because I want to reach people and change our community through the Enneagram. If you want to help in that by supporting me, you can go to patreon.com/doitforthegram. That is patreon.com/doitforthegram. Conflict. In any conflict, you must remember that emotions are usually involved, especially for a 4. It's a lot of emotions, so you are going to need to truly be patient when in conflict with a 4. You have to listen to 4s and let them express the depths of their emotions, feelings, and perspective in entirety. Then paraphrase what you believe you heard, felt, and the meaning of their statements. Do not get into a blaming mode because that will not help solve the issue, only escalate it or make a 4 shut down and leave the situation. Gear the conversation to some kind of practical outcome you both can work towards. And make sure to own your part in whatever the conflict is, because though the 4 may have acted emotionally reactive, or the conflict you believe that it's resolved, or you both walked away from it, from the conversation, the 4 can go into a deep internalization of the situation that just happened and start attaching the whole conflict and problems to being their fault. So make sure you verbally own your stuff in conflict with 4s. The few who do are the envy of the many who only watch. Jim Rohn. At their best, 4s know they are special because of the deep layers that they possess. Sincere, embracing, create beauty to help others. able to use their elaborate emotions to connect with others deeply and help them feel understood, create a safe space for vulnerability, and can sit with people in deep, dark emotions when they just need someone there with them. At their worst, self-indulgent, lack determination, pretentious, pity party, woe is me, obsessed with flaws, emotionally explosive, exploitative, diving into other people's personal business for selfish gain, basically. Fours, at their worst, in relationships are usually like Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. Very downtrodden, depressed, and drowning in huge pity parties, but also still have an emotional reactive trigger that can explode at times as well. Envy is the art of counting the other fellow's blessings instead of your own. Harold Coffin.
If you've made it this far and have not already taken the Enneagram test, here are a few that I trust. You can always go to kaizencareers.com/Enneagram and scroll to the bottom for the quick 2-question test based off of the Russ and Rizzo's quick test. The second one I trust is Eclectic Energies. It's another free test that has about 30 or so questions and can be pretty accurate depending how self-aware you are. The next one I trust is the Enneagram Institute. For a more thorough test that will give you possibly your top 3 types, you can go to EnneagramInstitute.com. And the tester has a minimum cost, but it's pretty accurate. Last but not least, I trust the Integrative 9 test. This can be found at integrative9.com. This test is one of the most expensive tests, but I believe it to be the most accurate and gives a ton of information based on your type. It includes personal life, but really shines on how your type performs professionally.
Tips and tricks for Enneagram 4s for healthy relationships. This is going to come from a book by Suzanne Stabile. And at the end of each chapter, she has something that talks about something that every type needs to do, something they need to accept, something they need to not accept, and something they need to really think about in order to actually have healthy relationships with other people. All right, here we go. All right. You can bear witness to pain without having to fix it. Because 4s understand the true power of emotional pain, when they see someone else in it, 4s have a tendency to want to try to fix it for them. But many times, not all the time, you can bear with them and not have to try to help fix the problem, because a lot of times pain is growth. And it's a part of what we need in order to continue to grow. So in relationships, sometimes you can't just fix a person out of their pain and their issues. They need it in order to grow. And so being there with them could be the best thing you can do sometimes, and not always trying to help fix them out of it. A good friend of mine, who's a 4, she's married to a 9, and 9s go through their lulls, and part of her 4ness, I would say, is wanting him to not have to go through those lulls, wanting him not to have to go through some of the pain or discomfort of not knowing what's next or what's going on. So she tries to play the fix-it role, and she realizes it doesn't really help, because that's not what he really needs. He just needs someone there with him in that moment. So 4s, be careful of trying to fix everyone's discomfort, emotional pains, and issues they have, because a lot of times we need those. And sometimes we need to actually go through that process to really find whatever we really need on the other side. So by interrupting that process, sometimes you stop that process from going on, and so it must keep happening until that person is able to actually get through the pain and really feel the extent of it, so they can start to make better life decisions, or it may just be healing for them as well. You can create your own image and express yourself in manifold ways, but not everyone will approve or understand, and that's okay. So fours, you are unique and normal at the same time. There is nothing missing. You have exactly and everything that you need. So part of it is being unique, but you have to remember part of being unique means that naturally society and what is called the normal will not accept you or approve or even understand. And that's okay. That's a part of your beauty as being an Enneagram 4. Your uniqueness is part of your beauty. The depths of emotion you bring is a part of your beauty. So don't be afraid to wear that even in your relationships. That's very important. But you can't live an exceptional life based on fantasy. So fours, being the romantics, they romanticize. They can see grandiose and these amazing things going on in their head or what they would like to happen and all of these things. But you can't live there. You got to go make something happen. Because if you don't, then you're stuck living in this fake reality. And you never really actually get the dreams or the things you really want accomplished. You don't actually make them happen. They're all stuck in this fantasy land. It's almost like you're stuck in a video game where you're doing a whole lot of stuff. I mean, in that video game, you're trying to win, you're trying to accomplish goals, trying to do all this stuff. But when you put the video game down, nothing really changed in real life. So you got to make sure you put the controller down and actually control yourself and actually really work towards some of these things that you want in life so they're not just fantasy. But you can't have lots of people who can accommodate your emotional volatility. So you've got to remember, you have the blessing of immense emotions. And I know fours are like, oh my goodness, you just said blessing. It's a curse. But no, it's a blessing. And it can be a curse if you don't work on self-mastery. It can be tricky. It's both, it depends on how you use it and how you work through them. So you can't think that there's going to be a lot of people who can handle that. You got to think about the other numbers on the Enneagram, right? And our society we live in, which is a lot of times emotion repressed naturally. And then you have certain types like 7s, 8s, and 3s who are naturally emotion repressed, causing all kinds of issues. And you got other people who are stuck in their heads and emotions are so scarring or scary to them. And so trying to handle someone else's emotions is not going to be a thing for them. So those people who can handle your emotional volatility, appreciate them. And just remember, it won't be everyone, and that's okay. They can still be your friends, still be in your life, but you have to remember that a lot of people are not going to be able to just handle the raw emotions that you have. Not a lot of people. But you can't have more than 1 or 2 people who are able to give back in equal measure what you are willing to put into a relationship. Ooh, so this is going to be tricky. Fours, you put a lot into relationships. You really do. It's something that you really want. It's something that you really love. You enjoy. You're relational. These things mean a lot to you. And so finding someone who is going to put back equal measure is going to be amazing when you find those people. And those are the people you should hold on and hang on to. Because it's not going to be many people who are going to invest as much in a relationship as a 4 will. So if you're not a 4 who's listening, if you have a friend who's a 4, make sure, check how much you're actually putting into their relationship. Because that 4 is giving and giving and giving. Because they want their relationships and the friendships they have to work out. So make sure, for people who aren't 4s who are listening, make sure that you're giving too. Make sure you're giving back. Because that 4, I can almost guarantee you, if they're in any sense of like healthy, then they're giving a whole bunch of themselves. So make sure that you're also giving back to them as well. And so 4s, remember, you're not going to find many people that's going to be that's going to invest that much into relationships as you do. And that doesn't mean that they're not worth being in a relationship with. It's just something you have to remember, because that's something that you have a strong affinity for, and it's deep emotional connection and depth. So you'll need to accept that people might actually understand you and like you. It could be that you are lovable and that you are enough. Fours, like I said earlier, and this comes from the Ian Cron book, The Road Back to You, there's nothing missing from you. There's nothing missing. And so when you feel those cravings that something's missing, think about the people who actually love you and care about you. I can guarantee you're a relational person, so it's actually, you have a decent amount of people who actually really do care about you and understand you. It's possible. Maybe not fully understand you, but they understand you enough to love you unconditionally, even in times of like sorrow and depression and pity parties, and when you're excited and you're happy. You have those people in your life. I'm almost sure if you're a 4. If not, find them. They're out there, trust me. But you have to know that you are super lovable and that you are enough. So you'll need to accept that life is ordinary, and that's okay. Life is not a fairy tale, let's be honest. Fantasizing, daydreaming, and creating wonderful things are amazing and great, and I love them, and it's something that you're great at. But life is pretty ordinary. You add a spark, you add a flair, you add something unique, which is the beautiful part of it. I think the beauty and uniqueness comes from the different things we do in our relationships, the things that we create. All those things create the uniqueness in life. But overall, life is ordinary. You'll need to accept that there is no such thing as a perfect relationship. Perfection lies in your ability to accept what is and make it into something better. So this part is super important as well. Because 4s have a tendency to romanticize and fantasize about their relationships. In your mind, when you're fantasizing and romanticizing, you have a perfect picture of a perfect relationship and what it's supposed to look like. That's not life. That's just not life. There's going to be extreme rough patches. They're not going to understand you. You're going to get emotionally volatile and say something, do something you don't mean to do, and it's going to hurt them. And things aren't going to be necessarily perfect. But what makes it great, good, or better is that you take what is happening in a relationship, you take their good, their bad, their ugly, and your own good, bad, and ugly, and you constantly work on it and you make something beautiful out of it. You work together, you cooperate, you compromise, and you work together so that you both can have something beautiful in your relationship. And that's where creativity could work some of its best magic from a 4, is when they take a relationship from both sides and they make something beautiful out of the things that they bring to it. You'll need to accept that most people don't value authenticity in the same ways that you do. So I think one of the most amazing things about 4s is that they're able to get to vulnerability quicker than other types. I can constantly hear 4s admit something that would be embarrassing to other people or other types they wouldn't readily say unless they really, really knew you. And even then they might not. But 4s can divulge certain vulnerability things like it's nothing. It's like, oh yeah, they were talking about my hair. Oh yeah, they were talking about my teeth. Oh yeah, they was doing this skin patch that I have, or this ailment or handicap I have. They were saying that. But in a way that doesn't seem like I'm going to fall off the edge of the world and life is over. It's just like, yeah, that sucked. They were talking about that, but oh well. And so that's one of the beautiful things that a 4 can do, is that they truly value 4s. You truly value authenticity. You have to remember, other people don't value authenticity the way that you do. And it takes a lot for some people to get to that point. Even though they say they're being real or authentic, a lot of times real and authentic doesn't include them being vulnerable and truly honest. So you'll have to remember that even in your relationships, you're going to be sensing something and feeling something in another person, and you're going to be like, you're not being real, you're not being honest, you're not being authentic. But to them it is. It's just their level of authenticity. And so they don't have the same measure or spectrum or depth of vulnerability and authenticity that you do. So you have to remember that in your relationships. And it takes time for people to get there as well. So you'll need to accept that you're going to have a few deep and significant friendships rather than lots of shallow social relationships. So even though you're very relational, fours, make sure you invest heavily in the few deep and significant relationships that you have, rather than having a whole bunch of them with a whole bunch of different people that are shallow, because that's not really what you want. Much as you are intrigued by others, that is not healthy for it to have a whole lot of social shallow relationships compared to actually having a few really good, really deep relationships. Because those are the ones that sustain you. Those are the people in the relationships that fulfill you, that build you back up. Not the ones where you're going out your way giving so much to so many different people who never fill your cup, who never give back to you. No, those are the ones that you need to have the fewer amount of. Yeah, you will have those friendships, I would say associates, but the ones you truly need to invest in are the few deep and significant friendships and relationships in your life, because those are the ones that give back the most. Those are the ones where you're going to get some of the most amazing authenticity from, because they feel so safe with you in their most intimate parts. So that's all I have today. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you rate. Make sure you do all those things. I really appreciate a lot of people who contact me on Instagram, which is at Do It For The Gram Podcast. The feedback has been really good, and I'm very humbled by it. And so thank you so much. I am still I will constantly be working on getting better every day of my life, because that's what I'm about. That's one of my core values, self-actualization. So please reach out to me on at Do It For The Gram Podcast. I really appreciate that. Also, go to the website, doitforthegrampodcast.com. If you subscribe, there's a free Enneagram tool that I have that I'm giving away if you subscribe. So you can definitely get that. Also, don't forget that there's a blog. And if you are a writer and you want to write about being an Enneagram number in your skin, reach out to me over Instagram. And we can definitely see how that process looks, and maybe even get you started to write on the blog. Right now we have 3 really good articles on there, a 7, a 8, and a 3. And so check those out. And also, if you need Enneagram coaching, like personal one-on-one coaching, I do Skype coaching, I do in-person coaching, all based on your Enneagram type. And also I do consulting through Kaizen Careers. So if you're looking for that, you can go to kaizencareers.com. You can also reach me at Milton, that's Milton, at kaizencareers.com, KAIZENCAREERS. You can reach me there, and we can talk about, what you're looking for, what you may need, and see if it's a good fit, so that possibly could help you. Besides that, if you are in the Memphis area, I'm having an Intro to Enneagram event May 2nd at Lunchpad. It's on Eventbrite. It's in Memphis. Enneagram 901 presents an intro to the Enneagram, which is going to be fun. It's going to have light refreshments. It's going to be good. The focus of Enneagram 901 is to create a community around the Enneagram in Memphis. So if you want to do that, that's great. And besides that, when your emotions start to kind of flare up and your mood swings start to kind of kick in, and you're about to get emotionally volatile, and then you start to feel like you're missing something and you're scrolling through social media and you feel you're missing something, you feel envious, remember, scrap that. Do it for the gram. The Enneagram, of course. See you next time.